Blue Valentine stars Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams and was originally released in 2010. I don't think it got a wide release until 2011, January sometime, if my recollection is correct. I think it was one of those Oscar bait situations. Regardless, this is one of the best independent cinema films that I've ever seen in my life. It is just so well done with the direction by Derek Cianfrance, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I recently watched his work with I Know This Much Is True, starring Mark Ruffalo. He directed that series, and I was really excited to watch that series after reading the book. He also directed the film The Place Beyond the Pines. Both I Know This Much Is True and The Place Beyond the Pines does not compare to this film. This so far is Derek Cianfrance's best work, and thanks to Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams' performances in it too, because they just bring this film to a whole new level. Like I said, this is an independent film, and it feels like it. It definitely feels art house a lot of times as well, and it's just very personal and very small scale and realistic with the performances that are going on and just the writing. It's basically like I wouldn't say an anti-love story, but it's the story of a couple that's basically falling apart and the turmoils and difficulties of what it's like to maintain a long-term relationship and what long-term love is like, and how it's pretty much impossible to keep together with long periods of time, and what the years does to a couple that, were in love or fell in love, or even if they were in love or were in love at some point, kind of thing. And it asks a lot of questions in that aspect. And I think everything from the writing to the direction to the performances in this film is really good. Might be one of Ryan Gosling's best films. Michelle Williams also does a really gutsy and raw performance, and they're both amazing with their chemistry, and it's just a really, really deep and personal film. And like I said in the thumbnail, don't let the Valentine fool you, because this is a darker, very, very sad, very depressing, more bleak take on a long-term love story. And basically what we have going on here is we have like a day in a life situation where it basically takes place from one day to the next. At the beginning of the film, the couple, Ryan Gosling plays a character named Dean, and Michelle Williams plays a character named Cindy, and they're dropping off their daughter to Cindy's parents' house, so the daughter's grandparents, and they go off and they have this little mini date, kind of, they want to try to rekindle the relationship, or like at least Ryan Gosling's character Dean does, because it's mostly his idea. They go to this motel and they try to rekindle the relationship, but it doesn't work out, and it really deep dives into their situation and where they're at in life. And then at the end of the movie, it's the next day and they're picking up the daughter, and things happen. We'll get there, but it also deals with flashbacks to the beginning of the relationship and how they met, and flashbacks with Cindy's parents and her upbringing and her family and how she feels about them, and the love story, if you will, of her parents and how she never wants to be like them and stuff like that. We get a lot of deep dives into Ryan Gosling's character as well, when he was young, his work, how he met Cindy, everything to do with their originally falling in love, essentially. And but the film takes place when they're, I think, like maybe 5 years into the relationship, when it's all really in turmoil and they're so used to each other, and their lives just went in different directions, even though they were together, and a lot of things happen. But the things are very mundane and the things are very simplistic, and it's really a fly on the wall kind of story, a bird's eye view on a very, very realistically portrayed relationship. And that's what I love about independent cinema, and that's what this film does so exceptionally well. We start off with the dad, Ryan Gosling's character named Dean, and his daughter's playing outside. They live in this kind of country looking house, like it's very small scale, not big at all. The whole film feels like very small town. I think it was all filmed in Pennsylvania. It was filmed in Pennsylvania. I forget what the towns were called that it was, but outside of Philadelphia and some small towns around there. Ryan Gosling was like napping. He wakes up. He goes out to the backyard playing with his daughter. He has a very fatherly like relationship with his daughter. Like he's a man who cares. You know this film is going to go into relationships falling apart and the woman and the man not being able to handle a relationship or being on the rocky scales of like love kind of thing. But you can tell that Dean really cares about his daughter and really is a family man and at least wants to give it his all to be like this guy really cares about his daughter. He's playing with her. He's like joking around that he wants to like eat her fingers and eat her hand because he's so hungry and he's talking like he has a lot of love for his kid and he wants to do anything to make it work and be a family. And you can just tell that he's really giving it his all, even though his all might not be enough. And then we meet Michelle Rodriguez, or Michelle Rodriguez. I keep saying that, and I tell myself I'm not going to. Michelle Williams' character, two totally different actresses, named Cindy, and she's a very busy woman. She has, a crazy job. She works as a nurse, and she's always also trying to maintain the family relationship too. And you can tell that she's a woman that works very hard to maintain her busy lifestyle, and Ryan Gosling does too, but she keeps a lot bottled in when it comes to her emotions, and she's a really great actress. And the scenes where she cries or gets angry, you can tell that her emotions are so bottled in and so held back that she looks like this woman that's just ready to just burst into tears or into crying fits at any moment kind of thing. You can tell she's really trying to hold it together for her family essentially. And you can tell that both of them are, like I was talking about with Dean's character. Same goes with Cindy's character, how they're really dedicated to having a family structure and they really care about their daughter Frankie. We get a kind of a look into that, and we start getting flashbacks, like I said, about where Dean came from and where Cindy came from throughout throughout the film. It shows us flashbacks. It's funny that Dean, at the beginning of the movie, he's playing this instrument that looks like a keyboard with a pipe attached to it that you blow into while you play the keyboard. Apparently, it's called a melodica. I had to look that up, and I find it funny. It's charming when that's what I love about independent cinema. How they add this like hipster style to it, and just Ryan Gosling like looks like a totally everyday average Joe. Like it's not like mainstream cinema where like hairstyles always look good and no matter what the person or the actor is doing, they're always looking like $1 million. Like James Bond can roll down a cliff and fucking break his leg and he still looks like he's on the cover of Time magazine. It's not like that. It's just Ryan Gosling looks so every day, and he's playing a melodica. You know, the most random hipster instrument. Like he might as well be playing a banjo kind of thing. I find those moments really realistic and really funny. Anyways, their family dog named Megan is missing, and she hasn't been home for like however many days. The daughter is doing a play at school, and at one point, Michelle Williams' character Cindy drives to the school and she notices there's a dog dead on the side of the road, and this is where she notices that it's their family pet. And she had accidentally left the gate open, and Ryan Gosling's character Dean knows this. At the school play, there's a bit of an argument and there's a bit of tension, and Ryan Gosling is basically putting the blame on Cindy. And this is one point where she just starts crying, and you can really tell that she's been holding this in because both of them are so fearful on what they're going to tell Frankie, the daughter, and what's going to happen with the situation. It's just another block on both of their shoulders in this already fragile and turmoil situation. With the flashbacks, Ryan Gosling, basically before he met Cindy, he works as a mover. And even at the job as a mover, there's this character named Marshall who is a really funny guy, but him and Dean are always bantering back and forth, and you can really tell that Dean is a very simple, minded guy, and the conversations that he has these mundane conversations with Marshall, and he's talking about relationships and what guys look for, what girls look for, what women look for, what men look for, the battle of the sexes, yada yada. And he's talking like rambling about the same points, the same mundane points, and just how people banter back and forth every day at like mundane jobs. And it really captures that essence of everydayness, for lack of a better word. I really like how that's done. And Cindy's character, played by Michelle Williams, she's when she's a young girl, she lives with her parents, and she lives. I don't know if her grandmother lives with them, but she's basically caring for her grandmother because her grandmother recently moved into an old age home, and she spends a lot of time there. And Dean, as a mover, was moving this old gentleman named Walter into the old age home. And even in the scene where Dean is taking care of the older gentleman, Walter, and like putting his pictures on the wall and going the extra step and the extra mile for his job, you can tell that this guy was really dedicated to anything that he does, and he's just a genuine dude with his care and love for anything that he does, and he's really getting personal with this Walter character, and you can just essentially tell that he's a great guy, and he really goes the extra step for people. And then he sees Cindy across the room with her grandmother, and he gets up the courage to literally go up to her and be like, "Hey, how's it going? I really want to get to know you. I really want to meet you," stuff like that. So that's how they meet, and he sees her later on the bus a few days later, a few weeks later, however long, and he recognizes her, and then he busts up the conversation again, and they really hit it off. Cindy has a boyfriend named Bobby during this time, which their situation is rocky, and she's clearly going for Dean at this point because she's really dedicated to be with him. But it's the flashbacks are interesting, but the core of the story is where they are present day, whatever you want to call it. I think they've been dating for 5 years, like I said, but they both look a lot more worn down, a lot more not taking care of themselves. Dean has a drinking problem. He's now a painter. He apparently doesn't work moving anymore. He now works as a painter, drinks a lot more because I guess he walks to his job. He doesn't drive a car or anything, and apparently he can drink while working or before working, or even though he shouldn't, he does, kind of thing. And they even have this conversation that I really like, where this is when they're at the motel, but and I'm kind of getting a little bit ahead of myself. But Cindy kind of questions him about how like driven he was to things and how many interests he has, and is questioning about what he wants to do with like the rest of his life. In a sense, like that's kind of what the argument is about. And he because it with the flashbacks you see that it was so much more interested in stuff, like he played an instrument or a few, he still did with the melodica, and he was such a good singer and storyteller and so spontaneous, and really had passion for life. And in just 5 short years, they just both of them do, but Dean, we're specifically talking about right now, just gets so mundane and so basic and so boring, and you can tell why, and you can see why this relationship is not necessarily, you know, it hasn't had the sustainability and the strength that it once had at a different point in time. So when they decide to drop off the daughter at the grandparents', Dean wants to go to this motel, which is like themed. They have different like rooms themed, and he books a future room. He's even on the phone with the guy, and he's saying, he puts the phone down for a second, and he's like, "Babe, what room do you want? Do you want the future room or the, I don't know, space room or something?" And he's like, "Decide, do you want the future room or the space room?" Now here's your first problem, okay? I'm not a dating expert or anything. I could be. I could probably start a separate YouTube channel for dating and relationships, but I haven't yet, and I don't consider myself a massive expert or anything. But one thing I have learned in my massive 34 years of life and dating is that a dude needs to lead, okay? A dude can't ask questions, a dude can't be unsure, okay? When it comes to relationships and when it comes to chicks, a dude needs to lead. So you don't put the phone down and be like, babe, what do you want? You say, honey, I got this. And you book the room you want for her, okay? You say, I got this, and you keep it moving. And he, throughout the film, he's not a leader at all, at least in the present time. Even the scene at the home when he literally locks his father-in-law out of the house, and his father-in-law is on oxygen, so he really can't be without his tank, but he locks him out to have the conversation, the, again, drawn out conversation with his wife. He's like, tell me what to do, tell me who to be, I'll be anything you want to be. Again, he's not taking leadership or responsibility whatsoever. He's literally asking his wife to tell him who to be. As a man, you're supposed to know exactly who you are and exactly what you need to be in any given situation, and I am a huge advocate for that. So him being like, tell me what to do, babe, you're the one with the vagina then. Man up. In the beginning of the movie with the flashbacks, you can tell he was very go-getter. I'm trying to think of another word for a go-getter, but he was very excited about life. He was very passionate about what he wanted, kind of thing. And he was always moving forward. And in the present day, he's so in place. And all the frustrations that Cindy have, for obvious reasons, is these. She seems like she can't say anything without starting an argument. Their relationship is very... he's usually drunk. He's usually at least tipsy. And she seems like she can't get through to him and tell him how she feels, her emotions, which is another problem because he has a listening problem. And when guys have a listening problem, that usually... tanks the relationships too when it comes to females. But when they're, so he books the future room, they're heading to the, I call it, it's the hotel, whatever. It's called the future room. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And on the way, she goes to the grocery store and she runs into this guy named Bobby, who she used to date at the beginning of the movie, the guy who she left for to go pursue Dean, and this guy Bobby had beaten the shit out of Dean in the past before. She shows up to the store and she's kind of like, whoa, old flame, kind of having, hey, how are you? How you been? Blah, blah, blah. And he starts being like, a relationship? Are you happy? And her answers are kind of showing that she's in a mundane relationship, and he knows this. And he's probably single himself. It's not suggested, but he's obviously, would take her back the first chance he gets, kind of thing. But she's not going for him, or she's not flirting with him or anything like that. She's just having the most average conversation she can, and she's like, okay, bye, nice to see you, yada yada. And she brings it up in the car to Dean, and this starts a fight with Dean, and then Dean starts getting completely jealous and like, did you talk to him? Like, what did you say? And then she's like, oh, you should have seen him, he's fat. And Dean's like, what do I care if he's fat? Well, if he was in good shape, I should like feel worse or something. Like, what are you talking about? He's making this big deal, and it's all channeled through jealousy and such insecurity. And the amount of insecure he is present day compared to the flashbacks is just a massive difference. And he's so like bent out of shape because of this guy and just her seeing him in a grocery store, and he wasn't even present, so he doesn't even know the situation. He's just building this thing in his head, and with him being so friggin' insecure in himself, that makes the problem. And that is the detrimental situation, is the fact that he is so insecure in himself. He drinks way more than he should, and he blows so many things out of proportion. So that's his issues. At the motel, he's trying his best to seduce Cindy with no success, kind of thing. He even gets in the shower, and you could tell she wants nothing to do with him. And it's really sad, and he reacts with more anger and more hostility. And I can't really sit there and say I blame the guy, but at the same time, in my logical brain, I'm kind of just like, if she's acting like this, why don't you just stick your shoulders up, say, see you later, bitch, and just walk out the door and go get another woman? As blunt as that sounds, I know some people would want to kick my ass for saying that, but it's kind of true. It's like, just move on from the situation. Like, clearly she's boring. Clearly she has no spontaneous energy in her left. Might partially be your fault, but just go find another woman. Like, go find someone else. Go find another relationship. Be happy. I know you have like the kid and everything, and you like that's the thing with them. They really, really want to stay together for the kids or whatever. It's a kid in this situation, but I'm thinking of Blink 182. Stay together for the kids. um, but she really does play a miserable woman in this film, and a lot of it is her, a lot of it is him, but they're just not a good couple together. I really liked everything that had to do with her flashbacks and her family too, and it showed what her parents were like and the conversation she's having with her grandmother and her grandmother saying like, love is really hard to find. You kind of only know what it is if you find it, if you ever do. And she was even saying that she might have not even found it with her husband, who's not shown in the movie. Like her grandfather, Cindy's grandfather, is never shown, but the grandmother says like, I may have not even found love in my life, kind of thing. And we have like a dinner scene with the family, which this is so common, and it's unfortunate how common it is, like especially in like conservative families and really not unstable but unhappy people. Like they're sitting at the dinner table and the father starts saying a prayer like he's, bless us O Lord, for these are gifts which we are about to receive, and like 20 seconds later he's like, you expect us to eat this garbage, to the wife. And poor woman is just sitting there so humble, and you can tell this guy he must have gotten violent or hit her, or just had some kind of rage problem. And he's just sitting there. He's like, "I want you to eat your gosh darn dinner." I don't like to say the GD word, uh, but he storms off, and it's just like, it's just sad how people like to bring anger to the dinner table as if it's like the most powerful situation and place to release it. I've always noticed that. I've noticed that in cinema. I've noticed that with my own family, other people's families, discussions that I've had with other people. It always seems to be at the dinner table. Maybe it's because the moment's so intimate and people who are angry want to like destroy that intimate moment. But I've always noticed that people channel their anger to personal moments like that where it should be respectful, breaking bread kind of thing, and then they just go act like assholes. But that scene really got to me because of that, and it seems so everyday, like that's the norm. Like, if you are married for X amount of time, this is who you're going to become, and it's scary, you know. And the film portrays that. It's like, yeah, this is what happens to people, but is it? That's what you ask yourself. Is it? Is this what happens to everybody when they're married for so long? It shouldn't be, and I don't think it is. And it's a big world. This can't be it. I think this is just a specific, you know, amount. I think there's a small number of people who turn into assholes. It can't be like 99% of people who get married will eventually start throwing food at each other and just, you know, purposely making the other person miserable. But anyways, I digress. I'm going into a rant with that. Another really famous scene is when Dean is playing the ukulele. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It might be my favorite. He's like, I gotta sing goofy. I can't sing normal for it to sound good. I suck at singing. I gotta sing goofy if it's gonna sound good. And she's dancing in front of like a store shop window, and he's playing the ukulele and singing. She's dancing like they're just having this intimate moment, this intimate bond. Her in her young days, she ends up pregnant, and she thinks it's Dean's, but it could also be Bobby's because of the timeline, and I understand that. But she goes to the doctor to get some advice, and she does seek, an option to get rid of it. And she's talking to the doctor, and she's talking about like sexual questions, and she admits a lot of things, like she lost her virginity at 13, which is, I mean, not horrible. It happens quite commonly. Then she says she had like 25 partners, and I think at this point she's like 21. It's like, again, like it's kind of mid, like it's not great, but it's not horrible. It's not like 125. But just for the fact that she's so young and, you know, her not knowing who the father is, to me, is kind of like too irresponsible. But that's just my personal opinion. You know, there's protection. The first, like in the movie, the first time with Bobby, he's an asshole. She she expects him not to finish inside, and he does finish inside, and he doesn't have a condom, and he doesn't give a fuck. So she's left fucked over in that. I like totally understand that, but it doesn't really show what the sexual situations were with Dean. However, anyway, she ends up pregnant, and she does go to get rid of it, and it does show a really it doesn't, it's not graphic, but it is really detailed in how she goes with it, and I'm very, very glad, being a pro-lifer, that she decided not to go with it, and she changed her mind last minute. Like, she was about to go with the operation, and she said, like, she freaked out, and she said, no, I really can't do this, and she was crying, and then she left, and the doctor stopped and everything. I like how they did that. For me personally, like I said, I lean more to pro-life, but I'm not a political channel, so unsubscribe if that really, really pisses you off. But I'm just saying, I'd rather, you know, a person not go all the way with that medical procedure than go all the way with that medical procedure. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I like how Dean he wants some information from, this is when they're young again. He like threatens to hop a fence, or basically climbs a fence and threatens to hop off if she doesn't tell him something. I forget what they were arguing about, but it's funny because he did the exact same thing in The Notebook when he's hanging off the Ferris wheel, and he's like, will you go on a date with me? Well, in this situation, he's like, tell me or I'm gonna, or he's on the fence, he's like, telling me I'm gonna jump off. Just reminded me of The Notebook. So it's like, oh my god, it's like a pattern with Ryan Gosling kind of thing. I like how they throw in the song Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. That song was also in the film 45 Years, which is released by the Criterion Collection, by the way. Really great film. That song's, it really hits home with a few scenes and a few themes, and I really liked how they threw that in here. So good stuff on that. And then I can't not talk about the scene where Dean shows up drunk to the office of Cindy, and it's sad too because Cindy's boss was always like giving those heavy flirtation vibes, but she was never going for it. But at that moment, she realizes that her boss wanted her to like move to an apartment or move to cities, and was kind of hinting that she was really good at her job. But then she notices that in reality, he just wanted her closer and further away from her husband and everything. But Dean shows up at the office, and they have this like magnificently choreographed and shot like camera shot fight scene and argument scene, and it's just so good. It's so raw. I'm sure a lot of it was improvised. The director had this thing where he would tell Ryan Gosling to act a certain way without Michelle Williams knowing about it, and tell Michelle Williams to act a certain way without Ryan Gosling know about it. So they would always be confused on set when they were having argument scenes. They would be so realistic because both of the actors were told different things, and then both of them would be confused, and then both of them would get frustrated, making the scene more realistic. And I found that really cool, actually, with the on Derek Derek Cianfrance's part. This scene is gorgeous. Okay, it's just so well written, so well done, and so well what's the word? Executed. That it's just brilliant. I love that scene. He's putting his stuff in his car, and he's just like, "You'd love if I get into an accident," and she's like, "Yeah, yeah, of course I would." And he's always again like using his insecurities as bait to kind of like really get under his wife's skin. And he busts out this line. He's like, "You never have time for anybody. That's the problem. And you only have time for these people at work, and they don't even give a shit about you." And at that moment, he kind of like hits some truth, and you can tell how she starts walking away faster because she knows that she is giving too much time to the wrong things and not enough focus to family and like keeping, well, she is, but she's just doing it the wrong way kind of thing. And he really like hits her in the wrong button kind of thing, saying like these work people don't give a shit about you because they don't, right? And I love the ending scene too, where Ryan Gosling is walking towards the fireworks and away from the relationship, and they realize they just can't do it anymore. And like I said, I blame both, but you can see, like, watching a film like this, you know that these situations are very avoidable if people are wise enough and educated enough to not let it get to the place, because there's always a place where it's too late to go back. Like there's a point of no return when it comes to relationships failing. And you can tell that if, you know, this guy wasn't doing this or this woman wasn't doing this, like if Michelle Williams was putting more passion into the relationship and just not being so hyper focused on work and rushing and like, oh my god, and like just looking so old and beat all the time, she would probably have, you know, a happier relationship and a happier life. And if Ryan Gosling wasn't being so damn controlling and damn jealous and leading the freaking situation like a man with balls, yes, I will say it, a masculine alpha dude who has balls and knows how to lead a situation like a leader with his lady by his side and being like, babe, I got you, don't worry. I got this covered, don't worry. Then he would have more success. Where they are, they both got themselves there. And they really should be blaming themselves a lot more than each other, but that's easier said than done, usually. Overall, this is an extraordinary film. I mean, I gave this a 5 stars. I think the performances are legendary, and it's just so personal, and it's the music, the score is very independent, very art house, a lot of it, and dedicated performances. And I think this is a real perfect bird's eye view into a hard situation between two people who just don't know how to keep it together and don't know, are basically clueless essentially, but came from such a place of love, and how people can change in such a short amount of time if you don't put the work and if you don't have the knowledge and if you don't work on yourself especially. It's a really, really good wake-up call, I think, for a lot of people, especially before they get into relationships, but even during. It's a good movie to kind of like punch you in the gut and say like, wake up kind of thing. Really, really great stuff, and amazing work by Derek Cianfrance, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So amazing movie by an amazing director. Go check it out if you haven't. If you're watching this review, though, I really hope you have, because this review is full of spoilers. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with more soon, so stay tuned for those. Check out what's on the channel already. Stay tuned for what's coming. Until next review, have a good one. Take care and cheers.